When I watch Ben Simmons, 6'10" point guard, and nobody in the NBA can stay in front of him, and he's got great court vision, I'm like, oh, like that doesn't come down the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
This kid's a really, I mean, he's better than Ricky Rubio, but he doesn't look special to me.
I think, Colin, with him, it's you have to remember, too, kind of who he's playing against, right? Like, so he's only 18 years old, and he's been playing at this top division now in Europe for a couple years.
Yeah.
So he's a little more tested than, like, the traditional European prospect. There was a clip that kind of made the rounds during the conference finals when I was out, I think I was in Houston, and it was he had a step-back three that kind of had everybody like, oh, wow. Like, he stepped back to an NBA distance. He looked kind of like Harden, and it's like, I just wish it was faster.
That's my takeaway. He doesn't pop athletically.
Yeah, and it's hard, like there was another clip of him, I think, trying to dunk in warm-ups, and I don't want to say he looked strained, but it looked kind of like me trying to like grab the net, like hit the backboard a little bit.
Yeah.
Where I just wish it was a little bit more. Now, he's played a ton of basketball in a row, and I think that's one thing. I think he's played like 18 straight months or something. So maybe that's kind of the wear and tear of that. That's a unique mileage situation. The NBA schedule may be even easier for him.
But Dan, it's one of these things. I said this the other day. I was talking to a friend. And you don't have to know soccer.
Sure.
You know how American soccer fan is. It's my sport. It's not yours. Don't have an opinion on it.
They're easy to find. They're the guys in the scarves.
Yes. Yeah. I watched Ronaldo enjoy it. Literally, it lasted 10 seconds. He got the ball in the left wing, and his acceleration at his size.
He looks different. Yeah.
And the ball stuck to his foot. It's like, okay, who put the super glue on his cleats? And it was 8 seconds, and then he passed the ball. But in the 8 seconds, you're like, oh, holy hell. You don't have to... Special, messy, ball on foot. My thing is when I watch these guys, I like the draft. I watched the combine this weekend. I just don't see a lot of special. The kid at Arizona,
he's got a shot.
There's a little Greek freak there. There's a little, whoa, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's got a shot.
But I don't see a special dude.
I think Marvin Bagley's interesting too.
Okay, now I would draft him number one. He's the Duke kid. Yeah. He is the one guy I would say, all right, that's my number one pick. Because to your point,
he's like an offensive genius already, and he should have been a senior in high school last year. And he did
got
that
better.
In the ACC.
Every time I saw him, Danny was better.
Yeah.
The next time, so I'm like, okay, he's got a work ethic.
The guys that I've talked about the draft feel pretty strongly about the top. They do these things in tiers, right? And they've got kind of 3 or 4 guys that they feel pretty good about in that top tier. And they like the second tier. You mentioned Trae Young. That's a guy who's in the second tier for some people. Others, he's not. Michael Porter's a guy that, I think...
I don't know enough about him.
It's scary. I had a conversation with some of my friends in Chicago because he's a guy that the Bulls have been linked to. And it's sort of like, if he's there at 7, do you want to take him? Because there's a reason he's there. And that's probably because the medicals are a little dicey, right? If he slips the way that people think he might, you might in your mind think, this is a guy who was the top prospect in high school. This was a guy who was going to change Missouri basketball before he got hurt. He's the number one pick for years. This has been on this track. Why is he there at 7? And it's because 19-year-olds that have back problems, like that's scary. That's really scary.
Dan Woike was at the conference finals, covers for the LA Times, the NBA, and the NFL. When you were at the conference finals, every NBA writer that matters in the world is there. Every NBA voice that matters. The Kawhi Leonard situation, it feels like Pop misjudged his personality, got a little tough with him, and Kawhi and his uncle are like, we ain't playing that game.
I mean, and that's how Pop deals with everybody, as people who've had the good fortune, I guess, or the bad fortune to ask him questions before and after games. The tough love from Pop can come in a lot of different ways. Right. He's very direct. He doesn't sugarcoat stuff, but he does treat people like, I think what's made him a good manager of personalities over the years is he does kind of treat people to the way they want to be treated. It takes a special kind of coach to connect with Steven Jackson and Tim Duncan, right?
Yeah,
like two polar opposite personalities, and he's done that. I think the Kawhi Leonard, like kind of the divorce in San Antonio, is something people in NBA circles have seen here for a little while.
Why?
I just think that, it's not the type of town that necessarily people want to come up and be stars in. Like they were in a unicorn situation, right, where they had the perfect mix of the perfect players at the perfect time. And Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, guys that all took less to stay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That doesn't seem like a modern
Manu
NBA
was a later
situation.
pick, and Tony's a later pick, and Duncan has the perfect kind of Michael Thompson personality, although, he was obvious. But there is something to be said about they got the perfect mix of a rough, rigid, tough coach and coachable players.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a coach who's interested in worldly things, and it was a worldly team. It just all made sense. And I think, when I've seen the Spurs over the last few years, it's that's not something they're going to be able to recapture. That version of the Spurs.
That's interesting. So it was lightning in a bottle.
I think so. I mean, I think it was perfect timing, right? I mean, this is a team that has the good fortune of, and look, they helped it, but they lose David Robinson for a season to an injury, and they end up with the number 1 overall pick, and it ends up being Tim Duncan, the heir apparent to one of the great centers of a generation. I think Kawhi Leonard is in an interesting situation right now where he can kind of dictate.
Oh God,
at least where he wants to go now. Look, that doesn't mean they have to trade him there, and I don't think the Lakers can offer the best package.
They can't.
And I don't think the Clippers can either.
But Dan Woike joining us covers the NBA. But Dan, I got to give him credit.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is the best player in the NFL. He's trapped. Kawhi Leonard says, I just want to go to the Lakers. He has total leverage.
Well, it's because of the player movement, right? I heard you talking about this earlier.
Yeah, it's great.
It's the ability that in a year...
The NBA allows its players to do this.
Sure, and teams are penalized, when they don't kind of deal with these requests because they know in a year they could lose them for nothing. And losing a guy like that for nothing, you look at kind of what the Clippers were able to do with Chris Paul and where they got lucky in the sense that had to be a sign and trade for that to work out in Houston.
Yes.
And they were able to get some assets back, and they were able to get some useful players. They were... now whether or not they did a good job with those assets is kind of still up in the air. I mean,
they got the 12th and the 13th pick. They've got their big, and
they've got Lou Williams at a very good post-market deal.
Clippers are not in a terrible spot.
Not at all. I mean, I think they can they're in sort of the choose-your-own-adventure portion of their franchise where they can go rebuild, and they've got the pieces to even get younger and more exciting that way, or they can try to contend again. Now, whether or not I don't think Kawhi Leonard on the Clippers changes kind of their trajectory. I think they're, sort of back where they were as a playoff team, but not a team that can beat the Warriors. I think what makes Kawhi most interesting is sort of he seems like a very packageable superstar. Like he can be with someone else because he doesn't need to dominate the ball. He's a willing defender. He does all these things great. And he's sort of the perfect player to go up against the Warriors because his length allows him to switch on everybody. He's been a problem for them in the past. And I think he helps you kind of beat Golden State.
Let's do a guessing game.
Oh, boy.
Dan Woike is joining us, LA Times NBA reporter. So you got to cover the whole league. This is why I really like this. And it kind of gives you a freedom. Mm-hmm. So I just say to you, Paul George, where's he end up and why?
I think he's a Laker. I think it kind of – I got the sense around the All-Star game kind of that being sort of in that spotlight. LA had no Los Angeles All-Stars this year. First time this has happened, I think, certainly pre-Kobe. I don't have the stat in front of me, but, no hometown players. And Paul George, Russell Westbrook, those guys became the de facto hometown guys. Yeah. And this is a guy who's played in Indianapolis. He played at Fresno State. He played, in Oklahoma City.
He has a house in Calabasas.
I know. To be in Los Angeles and to kind of have all the attention and to have sort of the spotlight on him on such a big stage, it felt like that maybe mattered a little bit. Now, I think when I look at kind of that team, Oklahoma City is still an interesting destination for him, and being paired with Russell Westbrook, I do think they're a good match. I think that the rest of that roster needs some work. But my gut, if you're going to make me guess, I would guess the Lakers.
LeBron James.
Oh, God. I don't have a guess here, which is a cop-out. But what I think is super interesting, we were talking about this before I came on, is sort of every time LeBron has made a decision, right, we've gotten to know his mindset. So when he signs in Miami, it's clear he's going there to win, right? That is about rings. That is about championships.
That's about rings.
When he goes to Cleveland, that's about redemption, and that's about kind of finishing what he had started before and making kind of wrongs right. What does he want to do right now? And the execs that I've talked to, what's so intriguing is nobody knows. I mean, this could be a quality of life play. This could be, you had Ice Cube on earlier and he was talking about it. He was talking about things like legacy. This could be a legacy play. Go win somewhere where, to beat the Warriors in the Western Conference. I mean, no one's done that. There's something to be said for that. You do it as a Laker. This is a town that made Nick Young a giant star. You know what I mean? Nick Young on a terrible Laker team was riding the Zamboni at Kings games or throwing out first pitches. It being famous as a Laker is its own thing. It was interesting hearing Ice Cube talk about it. When he was doing his Magic Johnson pitch, in my mind, I was like, that sounds like what Jerry West's pitch should be is you want to talk about legacy and doing something no one's ever done before. Come save the Clippers.
Yeah.
That one banner there, Ice Cube said kind of the Lakers